Hey everyone, today we're reviewing The Saint of Bright Doors by Vajra Chandrasekera, which is a standalone. I don't believe it'll be the first book in a series. I enjoyed this book. I suspect it will be in the top 5 books I read this year, though I suspect my enjoyment won't be a very common opinion. This is a book that requires some contextual understanding to really get the most out of, at least in my opinion. Even I don't fully understand this book. This book does mention topics such as castes and races, which I don't understand in the South Asian context. I don't know about that, so here we are. I'm doing my best here. I enjoyed it, but maybe other people won't. I feel as though this book is a critique on how a Buddhist society uses Buddhism as a organized religion to control minorities and oppress people. At the same time, this book has a bit of a surreal bent. I won't necessarily say magical realism because it's more upfront than that. I'll use an example. The main antagonist in this book is called the Perfect and Kind. He's the main character's father. He has the ability to rewrite reality and retroactively change things which happened in the past to change the present. That is a very surreal thing. I thought it was really cool when that happened. I was never bored. Now that said, I feel like the book is a little low-key for the first half and it really kicks into high gear with the rebellion in the second half. And finally, if you like Western-style fighting-based books, like, I don't know, you can name any number of ones that are popular in the fantasy area right now. This isn't like that, basically, at all. One of the book's main messages is that violence is the tool that oppressors use to oppress people. So violence is done by the antagonists and the bad guys in this book, whereas the good guys generally don't. There are a few exceptions, but generally don't in this book. Okay, let's discuss like the really obvious thing about this. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a story that when the Buddha decided to become a spiritual person, he dumped his wife and he called his child a fetter and he renounced all of them and he walked away. He had to do this because to become a spiritual person you need to renounce all your worldly attachments such as family or money or power. In this book, The Saint of Bright Doors, the main antagonist is basically the Buddha. He did the exact same thing to the point of calling his own son the fetter. The main protagonist's name in this book is Fetter. This is really obvious. It's really obvious that the author is trying to make this a direct commentary on Buddhism right here. Okay, this book is about the complicated relationship people can have with Buddhism growing up. In the West, we like to say that Buddhism is a non-violent religion, when in actual practice, like, if you go someplace that's Buddhist majority, it doesn't necessarily work out like that. People who are Buddhists can be just as violent as anyone else. In this book, the priests and the monks, who are acolytes of the Perfect and Kind, who's basically the Buddha, lead pogroms and they justify assault and they justify purging the hinterlands. The author of this book is from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is presently in a state of kind of chaos. I got the feeling that the fact that the frustration with the status quo in Sri Lanka somehow informed the writing of this book. My favorite sequence in the book is when the protagonist is sent to prison. It's never explained why he's sent to prison. He's just kind of rounded up and sent there. He's never put on trial, really. It reminded me of Josiah Bancroft's The Books of Babel, particularly Semele Ascends. That's the only one I've read. In this book, there's a sequence where, in order to progress, the purpose of this book is the protagonist is trying to climb the tower to the top. In order to climb one particular section of the tower, he needs to become an actor and like do a play. It's never explained why. It was a really baffling thing in this book, but it was really emotionally compelling. Now, going back to The Saint of Bright Doors, something similar happens when the protagonist is sent to prison. He basically has to become a work inside the prison. He has to help people who work there, translate documents for people, write stuff down. He basically has to act like a prison warden himself in order to work in the prison, which is really compelling and also a little baffling. No one really understands why in the Tower of Babel it's so strange in Semele Ascends, and for the same way no one really understands why the prisons are so strange in this book. They just kind of are that way. And I liked how when Feder escaped prison, he didn't really escape. He got back to Luriat, but it kind of sucks in Luriat no matter what. It's a police state. There are pogroms and like purges going on all the time no matter what's going on. So going from the prison back to Luriat just kind of sucks. So it took that for him to finally realize, oh, I have to rebel. I can't just sit on the sideline. That's when he decided to take the fight directly to his father instead of skirting around the edges and trying to fix things without a direct confrontation. I broadly enjoyed the characters in this. I will say, protagonist's father, the perfect and kind, is a Buddha parallel. He's very calm and controlled. That was a very strong personality that he had. He was a very erudite, and he liked to solve problems with discussion and manipulation. Whereas Feder's mother, the mother of glories, had a very direct and angry personality. She prefers to solve problems by stabbing them. I liked this dialectic comparison duality thing that they had going on. Feder felt equally pulled in both directions. At least to me, that's what I felt like. They had a yin and yang sort of thing going on where his father was very yin, he's calm and collected and controlled. His mother is very yang, she's angry, she's violent. I liked how in the end of the book, Feder was only able to fight back against them by kind of learning their individual strengths while rejecting their weaknesses and using them in the end to lead the fight against them. Going back to this being a Buddhist parallel, I think it's technically heretical. I mean, the Buddha is the bad guy in this book, more or less. This book engages with Buddhism as a historical entity as opposed to its theology or strictures, such as it doesn't really address the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path. Instead, this is as Buddhism as a political entity, how its monks can lead pogroms or encourage violence. And let's talk about the world building and setting. The city of Luriat is built at a magical nexus of where time and space intersect. The characters have magical reality warping powers. As a result, kind of strange stuff bubbles up from the cosmic underbelly. In Luriat, you can walk around a corner and there's a demon just kind of sitting there, smoking a cigarette, kind of feels like. There are strange doors which you can't open up, but there on the other side there's a pocket reality to a long forgotten never was sort of thing. I liked how this weirdness made the book feel surreal and dreamlike. Now that said, it could have been better. The narrative was so hands-off in its attempt to be dreamlike, it never really established the fundamentals. For example, there's constantly pogroms going on about one case persecuting another or one race persecuting another. We were never told what are these castes, what are these races. It was taken as a given that we'd understand what they were. I didn't. I was left confused about anyone's motivations for these background important things that were happening. I feel as though the story would have been better if it actually addressed these things and talked about them. Overall, this was a wonderful book. I enjoyed it heartily. I can definitely recommend it, but just be aware you might not enjoy it yourself. This isn't a for everyone sort of book. Have a nice day.